Welcome, everyone. This is an interview with Walk the Talk America. Mr. Mike, how's it going?
It's going good. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. And we've got Mr. Mario Mosin along with us tonight.
Hey,
And we have the co host extraordinaire, Mr. DM Foss. Welcome.
good afternoon.
In a world of uncertainty and turmoil, one man stands alone, along with his faithful sidekick. A man who entertains and educates the masses weekly, 70% of the time. Born out of the dusty plains of Washington State, now from the coastal forests of Oregon. The man, the myth, the man. G23.
So, I will start off with Mr. Mike from Walk the Talk America. You want to kind of introduce what Walk the Talk America is for anyone who may not know, and how Walk the Talk America was founded?
Yeah, absolutely. So Walk Talk America was founded in 2018. I originally grew up in the firearms industry in the sense of nepotism, right? My family owned one of the largest importers of firearms in the United States. It was called Eagle Imports. I sold it in 2018 to focus on Walk Talk America full time, but it's basically, where Walk Talk America started. We had a tragedy in 2009 in my company where my president and a near and dear friend of my family's took his own life with one of our firearms. And at the time, I always thought it was very strange how the firearms industry couldn't talk about suicide, um, didn't talk about like negative outcomes from firearms. And I get it, right? It was because it could be weaponized against us. So it's one of those things where, I would kind of observe, and I noticed that every year we would we would have combat vets, active duty military that would gravitate towards the gun industry. They'd be at the NRA show, they'd be at SHOT Show, and it seemed like every year one or two were gone. And I thought, this is the weirdest thing. We can't talk about suicide, and we kind of overlook suicide, but yet it's something that affects our community so much. As you know, like first responders, like I said, active duty military, combat vets, that's a big part of our community. If you look at any of the gun companies, you'll notice that there are a lot of veterans that work for these companies. It just seems like a place where people gravitate towards and they trust that information. So I always wanted to do something in honor of Bill, who was the president of my company, but I never knew what. And then in 2018, I had a chance meeting with a lady who basically asked a question. It's a stranger. We invited her to dinner. We were at a bar, me and my national sales manager. And she asked a question. She said, look, I don't know anything about guns, but what happens during a mass shooting? And basically I said, hey, look, everybody blames us. We blame mental health. Nothing ever happens. She asked one question that was life-changing for me, obviously. She said, if you can't give up legislation, there's got to be ways that you can work with the mental health community to find solutions that might help. And, I thought about that. I said, well, I don't think we really do that. And we didn't at the time. So it's something I became obsessed with. But the original idea of the organization was I wanted to take gun industry money and throw it at mental health, because everything I had read about the mental health community was they were very underfunded. So I thought, well, just like big pharma, right? Like people take their money and they're good. This is an opportunity for us. And at the time at the dinner, my national sales manager was like, you should be donating $1 a gun to mental health. Like we knew what that meant. Right. But I thought that is a good idea. Right. But, as it turned out, there's really no easy answer to this. So my whole idea of throwing money at the mental health community, which anyone could do, didn't really work out. And slowly but surely, Walk the Talk America kind of evolved into an organization that bridged the gap between the firearms industry and the mental health community, but also look for homegrown solutions to get people the help they need when they're in crisis without fear of consequence. Now it's become much, much more than just a bridge. I think, that was the original intention. And now I mean, we educate, we advise, we look for innovative solutions that no one else is doing. Because as the gun community, we have a lot of valuable space. We also have the education component that is very valuable to everybody outside of the industry. So that's a little bit what Walk the Talk America is, the quick synopsis. We've been doing this for 4 years, so it's hard to fit it in for time constraints of where it started and where it's come from. But I'm very proud of the things that the gun industry is now doing to kind of address these issues.
So, thank you for that little brief synopsis. And Mr. Mario, you want to introduce yourself to the people that may not know who you are and a little of your background?
All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you for the invite. For all you guys that don't know me, my name is Mario. I am a retired Sergeant First Class. I served in the United States Army for 22 years. I am a Iraq veteran. Deployed 3 times to Iraq. Actually, I'm one of the few people that have all 4 campaign stars on the Iraqi campaign medal. So there's very few of us out there. Really started getting myself into YouTube, one because I wanted to find people that were very much like-minded. Um, through all my ordeals as far as combat goes, I've dealt with a lot of issues with mental health. To this day, I still deal with them. Um, and it has made me a different person once I came back from my first deployment. Um, and in reality, I try to use my voice to help others. For a lot of you guys that may not be subscribed to my channel, I actually have a PTSD combat veteran series in which I talk a lot about my own personal dealings and issues with certain topics. The reasoning for a lot of these videos is really just to educate people, educate loved ones who may not really truly understand their loved one. And through this process, I've also learned how I can better improve myself, because uh, unfortunately, even though you know uh, Iraq is still out of my head, I mean, as far as my body goes, and my military service has never been out of my mind. I deal um, with serious PTSD, depression, anxiety. Now I've also been diagnosed with PTSD, but I also have traumatic brain injury. I actually got blown up, and when I was one of the engagements we had, and it's just one of those ordeals that happens in war. Um, and in reality, I wanted to come in here just to introduce myself and just to help others, to make them understand the issues that we got going on. I will be addressing some of the questions that Michael had in regards to suicide and how it's really perceived in the military community. But in reality, I just wanted to, lend my voice not only for myself, but for a lot of our veterans out there that are combat veterans. We also have guys from Vietnam, Desert Storm, who also deal with a lot of PTSD issues. And in many cases, not until my generation went to war, a lot of us didn't really know what PTSD really meant and the effects of it. So, thank you for inviting me, man, and I look forward to maybe answering some questions and giving you guys my perspective on this matter.
I dropped a link to Walk the Talk America and Mario Mosin's channel, and also his last video that on the PTSD combat veterans. Why do they commit suicide?
Thank you for doing that, Voss. So, first in tonight, we had Tactical Fed, Mario Mosin pulling double duty. Miss Vanessa Kitty is out there. Tara Smith's Kitchen. Big Al's out there. Gunpowder Beauty. Rob D, the New York Outcast, is out there. So we've got Alan B. Pro out there. Let's see Tim S. And am I missing anybody else? Keith Gregory. Mr. Kyle Lusk is also out there. So I know Brooke Cheney had Jake on not that long ago. Jake does a lot of work with Walk to Talk America. Mike can probably talk a little bit about Jake. And then I'm going to ask the same question to Mike, and Mario can chime in on the question also. That I asked to Mr. Jake during that live stream. So you want to talk a little bit about Jake and what he does for Walk to Talk America, and anything else like Zephyr Wellness, I think is his clinician.
Yeah, so Jake is a mental health clinician. He is a very popular man inside the state of Nevada when it comes to mental health. He sat on a lot of the advisory boards and whatnot. And he actually hosts a show. There's two shows. We have the Guns and Mental Health podcast, which Jake is my co-host on that. But he also has a show called Noggin Notes. And a few years ago, about 3.5 years ago, Jake had reached out to me and said, would you like to be a guest on Noggin Notes? And I was very excited at the time because I had been invited on many shows that were inside the gun chamber or the echo chamber of the gun industry, right? But I'd never been on a show that was from the mental health side. So it was the first time I felt like someone was reaching out to understand what we're trying to do. And it was really interesting because Jake, in the beginning, before we went live, he said, hey, man, I have a concealed carry license, but we can't talk about that. Okay. And I was kind of like, oh, okay. You know, he's just like, it's not a good look for people like me in my community to be gun people. And he's like, but I'm a gun person. And I thought, okay, that's cool. So we went and did the show and everything was cool. And he was digging what we were doing, like where we were trying to go with Walk Talk America. Well, we developed a relationship out of that. We started talking on the phone and I would bounce questions off of him. And he realized, he's like, nothing's ever going to change he even says it. He's like, I had to come flying out of the gun owning closet. Right. Because if I don't step forward as a gun owning clinician, then no one will, so he was really one of the first people that, went on a national platform and was like, look, gun ownership is normal. We need to bridge this gap. We need to stop staying on other sides of the room. And the cool thing that came about that is we have one of our main programs of Walk Talk America is we have a cultural competence course for mental health clinicians. It's a very popular course, believe it or not. Clinicians come through. It's a 3-part course and they get continuing education credit for their career. And it's basically gun 101. I mean, there's a lot of stuff in there that I think would be fascinating for I would say the 2A side, because it kind of crosses over into the mental health side. But at the same time, it'd probably be a very boring course, especially the first one, right? But it kind of breaks down that wall and brings clinicians in and gives them an opportunity there's no silly question. At the end of it, they get a better understanding of who we are as like the 2A crowd, Second Amendment crowd. So that's really how Jake came to be with Walk the Talk America. Like that's how he came into the fold. The man is amazing, man. He works harder than I do. He has Zephyr Wellness. He's opening up a 3rd facility up in Reno. But he does everything for Walk the Talk America. It's all donated, his time and everything like that. But he does a lot more for first responders. I mean, the guy's always working for free. So I call him like the vampire that could also turn into a werewolf. He's a mental health clinician that also is like very versed in the Second Amendment and guns. So it's kind of cool. But that's who Jake Wiskerson is.
Okay, so we have Mr. LW Rhodes out in the crowd. Gun Websites is out there, and Critter 9A just popped in. So welcome everyone. So my question to Jake was, what do you think about most states doing away with mental health coverage and behavioral health facilities?
What did he say? I missed
You know, he was talking about the it. It's definitely hamstringed a
Mhm.
lot of people seeking health because help and everything, and it's why there's a lot of homelessness in society that we have now because we don't have the healthcare facilities that we used to have for people that had some mental health problems, and that's why we have a ramped up um, homelessness situation that's going on. And under Obamacare, Affordable Care Act, it does on a federal level require mental health coverage, but there's also loopholes in that which allow for, if it's a privately funded um, insurance,
Mhm.
that they don't actually have to fund mental health. Um, and so people will think, well, hey, I've got, insurance, but they don't actually have the coverage that is needed.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah.
And um, with the Affordable Care Act, yeah, it has mental health in it, but a lot of the actual counselors and stuff can't gain access to that to be able to actually bill through um, the insurance side of it. So,
Yeah.
even with that, they get a low return rate. Um,
Yeah, because I know one of the things he always, we've had these discussions, and one of the things he's always complained about is that when it comes to mental health, there has to be a diagnosis first. And he's like, that's almost impossible to do when you first meet somebody, right? Like, you have to have that code, right, to run that through the insurance. So that's a huge issue right there, because he's like, look, people could come in and I can kind of take a guess at what's going on, but with mental health it's different. Like, you go walk in with a broken arm, your arm's broken. You can see it, you get the x-ray, it's pretty obvious. When you're dealing with the mental health side of things, it's a little bit trickier. And that's the problem with the insurance companies when they're requiring that you have them coded. I know that's a big thing he talks about.
yeah, but do you kind of see a direct correlation between, like, back 80s, 90s, we had a lot more of the mental health facilities and mental health um, places where you could just go, like behavioral health in Washington was a big place for like state funded insurance. That's where they would send people that may have, depression or whatever. Um, and with some of those facilities no longer being available, do you think that's kind of what is leading to more of the societal
Yeah,
properties that we're having?
I think it's such a nuanced conversation. I don't think you could just pinpoint it to one thing. I mean, one of the things that I did when I first started working with the mental health community, because it was great, because now I had all this access to be able to talk to people that know. And I know there was a big pushback against a lot of these facilities just because of the way people were treated in these facilities, right? Now, it seems like an easy problem to fix, right? Because you look at, okay, what corrections need to be made? But it sounds like a lot of these facilities were pretty horrible when it came to the treatment of people. So I'm not really sure what happened there or why those things closed. But at the same time, like, take a state like California. California has some of the best mental health coverage, right? Like, if you're homeless in California, you don't want to leave that state. Like, if you want access to the best programs, California is number one, and they have a massive homeless issue. So I don't think just making the best programs would stop some of these people from living out on the street, right? Um, there's so many variables to it. I remember asking the first time I was at a Mental Health America conference, it was in LA, and I was kind of like, what makes somebody not use the resources? And they're like, it's a combination of a lot of things. Like, for example, a lot of these places, facilities, you're locked in once you go there for the night, right? A lot of these people are scared of these places because they don't want to be robbed, right? They feel safer on the street. Um, Some of these places require you to be clean, right? So some people can't do that, right? Like they need whatever it is they're on. So I think it's a nuanced conversation. I agree with you. It kind of makes sense that you say like have more resources and have more facilities and have more beds, but it doesn't necessarily mean that's just going to fix the problem. My whole thing with root cause mitigation is, we need to try to do our best. And this is what I always tell people, like, one of the things that Walk Talk America does is we provide mental health screenings in the flyer of gun boxes and ammo boxes. And people are always like, well, what does that do? Right. And it's like, well, you don't have to be in crisis to take a mental health screening. Like, just check it out. It's kind of like, looking under the hood. Right. But my whole thing is if you catch people early enough and you swim upstream to try to prevent the unpredictable, then maybe you can catch some of these people before they get too far. Right. I always talk about this example. I use my ex-wife. My ex-wife has untreated schizophrenia. Right. We didn't kind of realize that until we were long divorced. But looking back on it, like a lot of her behavior and stuff like that, I look back at it and I'm just like, yeah, I'm surprised I didn't see that. But I'm not where I am now. Right. When it comes to this stuff, I just didn't understand stuff. But there was plenty of opportunity for us to try to intervene and get help for her. But nobody thinks, well, she's schizophrenic or whatever, and I think about that a lot. I think about what if we could have gotten her to places that maybe we would have paid a little bit more attention. And that's really what I think would help people with homelessness. It's not less like more beds out there. I think it's just hooking people up with resources and making it okay for them to want to go check themselves out earlier. Right. But I don't have the answers, man. Like that's such a tough question. I can only do what I think is right. And what I believe is that as gun owners, right, like gun owners should have access and should not be judged any different than anybody else. And we should have access to screenings, and we should have the ability to go get help without being hit with a scarlet A in our chest just because we own guns and people don't understand us. So I bet, maybe Mario has a different opinion on it. And like I said, I'm not always right, so.
You have an opinion there, Mr. Mario?
Yeah, the when we start talking about, you know, why are we talking about why people don't get help, or I'm sorry, you said that again?
So, my the one I asked Jake. Let me pull up that so I can read it exactly correct. It was, what do you think about most states doing away with mental health coverage and behavioral health facilities? So, like places to um, seek.
Wow. It's just putting a bandage on a wound is the way I look at it. In many of these states that we're talking about, they're trying to lower their rates any kind of way they can, and they feel that maybe if we take mental facilities or clinics or whatever the case may be, it's going to maybe lower people's premiums or whatever the case may be. Or in some cases, honestly, many of these states may not have the mental health numbers that other states may have. But I think in reality, that's going to change pretty soon, because if you really stop and think about it, the pandemic has really changed a lot of people, and has a really, you are starting to see more people actually seeking mental health because of it. My wife, who we've been married 24 years, she finally experienced like anxiety to a level where it it startled her, and that's because she was stuck in the house and stuff like that. So um I really feel that in many cases will change, because there's too many people that were affected by this whole thing with COVID, and many of them lost jobs, lost whatever the case may be. Maybe they lost a loved one to COVID, and all this stuff is affecting them. And in some cases, it's just something like that can trigger somebody, that can change people's perspective on things. Um, You are right, Mike. When it comes to coverage in California, when it comes to mental health, that is one thing that they do strive as far as doing a better job of it. Um, but in reality, there's no such perfect plan for this stuff because in order for it to work, people actually have to go ahead and seek the help. And obviously, I want to talk a little bit more about some of the issues that we have going on in our side of the town. And I'm just speaking as a person, as somebody who knows a lot of my friends who have died. Um, I was looking at a platoon picture that we took in Iraq, and I was looking at it, and 7 of those people in that picture are no longer with us, and it wasn't because they died of the enemy, because of the enemy's hands or anything like that. No, they died of suicide. So it's a huge thing within our community, in the veteran community, and that's the reason why I try so hard to put out as many videos and give as much information as I can to a lot of our friends out there who may have loved ones that are in the military, and they're seeing this drastic change in them, and how they are being affected by all the stuff that they see when they go to war. So yeah.
Uh, yeah, absolutely. There's war. I wasn't able to join the military, but anytime you're in that kind of a situation, it's going to change you. You know, even even with just like law enforcement and the stuff that they see and first responders and stuff, unless you work or you live that lifestyle, you'll never understand what those people actually go through and the demons that they try hiding. You know, because I worked long term care and I worked in the medical field for a while. And what got me out of it was I got really numb to death. You know, it somebody could die and you'd be like, there was just no feeling. You know, and it's like, how can you ever not have that feeling? And it just it's hard to really vocalize and stuff what happens when you're there and knowing and trying to help families as knowing that their loved one is dying and you're there to hear them take their last breath. you know
Yeah, there's unfortunately there's a lot of things that we have to deal with, and seeing people that we care about dying, it's not a good thing, man. I carry a memorial bracelet of one of my soldiers that died in Iraq in my platoon, and the hardest thing for me is that I basically saw him die in front of me, and it's something that bothers you. It's something you'll take to the grave because you'll never forget his facial expression, or you'll never, you. It's just it's really really hard, and it affects you. For the longest, for me, we had survivor's guilt, and it took me a long time. It took me almost 18 years to get off the survival guilt, and this is going through lots of therapy with the VA through the vet center, and going through other resources that I found, and believe me, it's one of those things that is really hard for you to get off your system. um and I think that's really the hardest thing. I mean, how do you explain that to your loved one, man? And in most cases, a lot of us don't, because one, we don't want to worry them, and we don't want to be to the want to worry our loved ones. But at the same time, we seen some stuff that's so graphic, man, that you're scared of the stigma that you're gonna get out of it. Because in reality, Hollywood doesn't do a good job of really, showing the true nastiness of war. Because you know you see one of your buddies get hit by a high velocity round, and then you know you look at what was left of his head. And I can tell you, it's stuff like that's just triggers you. And the fact that you're also having to deal with the aftermath once you come back. Because you got to stop and think about it. You're going from a very chaotic, you know super adrenaline rush type of situation, and then you come to the United States where it's just nice and quiet, and everybody's like, you know everybody gets along, and it's not chaotic anymore, and it drives you insane because you don't know how to really act. You don't really know how to really talk to people, and that's where a lot of them become isolated. A lot of them become very antisocial, and you know little by little they start getting themselves secluded into their own little cocoon, and then that's how a lot of them end up committing suicide. And I'll be honest with you, I was very close of going into that cocoon, and just you know putting myself in that situation. I have one of my good friends that was in Iraq with me. This guy ended up buying a house in Arkansas, like in the middle of freaking nowhere. And in order for you to get to his house, it takes you like 10 minutes. It's on a dirt road or whatever. There's nothing near him, and I didn't even recognize him because he let his hair grow, he let his beard grow. I had no idea that was him. I mean, we're talking, this kid was 10 years younger than me, and I couldn't recognize him. And then when I finally recognized him and he saw me, it just he felt relieved because it's like, oh man, I got somebody here that knows me, knows what I've been through. And we started to talk, and I told him like, why are you here, dude? It's like, look, man, this is the only place where I feel safe. And I'm like, it's crazy. It's crazy. I mean, I like being off grid, but come on, man, kind of crazy for my taste.
So, Miss Gunpowder Beauty asked a question. She says, with the rise of suicide in kids and teens, with what advice does Mike have for parents in the 2A community?
Yeah, that's a great question, and one that I'll just say that when you have a kid that's in crisis, or you have a lover or spouse that's in crisis, access to your firearm is the most important thing that you have to address, right? I've had arguments with people that say like they have to have their gun in a ready position, and I'm like, well, what if your kid's going through something? And they're like, he knows not to touch it, or she knows not to touch it, right? And that's the stuff that gets used against us in the gun industry. So my thing is always have an action plan for when someone's going through something. It's not worth it. I know you think the boogeyman's going to come through your door at any moment and kick down the door, but the real threat right in that moment is actually your kid getting to that firearm and doing something with it. I had a conversation the other day with somebody, and I wasn't going to pile on because this happened many years ago, but the guy lost his son to suicide by firearm, and he had killed himself with his dad's firearm, which, he's like, I never even thought about locking it up. Like, we had shot together and all these things. And it's like, that's not responsible gun ownership. I try to stay away from safe gun ownership is what all the people in the mental health community always talk about. And I'm like, gun people are some of the safest people on the planet, right? But sometimes they're not responsible. So start saying responsible gun ownership. So my recommendation when it comes to anyone in the 2A community is be aware, just like you're aware with your training and everything else, like what's going on with your family. Listen to them and understand that there might come a moment where you say, like, the gun has to be locked up and my kid does not have access to it. And it doesn't matter if ISIS is going to kick down the door tomorrow. Like we have to take the next 2 weeks, next month, next 3 months to get my son or daughter out of crisis. And then we can go back to staging firearms around the house, which I never recommended anyways. Like to me, I have 2 daughters. They've grown up around firearms. They're very aware of firearms. I trust them with firearms. I still don't trust them enough to keep firearms unsecure around the house. And it's not even so much of them. Sometimes I think about their friends that they bring over, right? So that would be my recommendation to anyone in the 2A community.
You can get a biometric safe where it's just a fingerprint.
Mm-hmm.
And, so if your kid needs to get into it to defend, to save their life because somebody's breaking in the house, they would still have access. But in that time where they need help, that something's wrong, you can remove that fingerprint so they can't have access to it. And it's still being responsible and everything, and just in case, their friends come over, their friends can't gain access to that firearm, because more of the time, firearm ownership and their kids aren't the ones that are, hey, look at this, and accidentally squeeze the trigger and shoot one of their friends. It's somebody who has grown up not around firearms that, oh, what is this? And they put their finger in the wrong place and the gun goes off.
Yeah, or they don't understand one in the chamber, right? Or they, that's the other thing too, is you bring up safes and biometric safes and everything like that. It's like you could train retrieving your firearm from a safe just as hard as you train with your firearm. Right? Like I have staged firearms all over the house that are in keypad safes or biometric safes, and I practice with them. Sometimes I sit on the phone and I just run my finger over the codes, right? Like we have to get out of that whole mind frame, especially when we have children. If you don't have children in the house, it's a different story. But when you have kids in the house, it's not worth the risk, especially when we were the first ones when we take like an AR class or we take some sort of shooting class, like we'll brag about it all day in the gun industry. Like, I took this course, it's a 7-hour course. I took it with Kevin Dixie or Rob Pincus or somebody like that. And, it's like, okay, good. Now train just as hard retrieving your gun from whatever safe you have. Like know your safe to where you could do it blindfolded. So I agree with you. There's biometric safes. The biometric safes that are coming out now are so much better than ones that they used to be. That's the cool thing about the technology that they're using now is it's going to almost give people no excuse except for maybe the cost of a safe, right? I do understand that safes are expensive, guns are expensive, but it is what it is.
So if you go to Costco, if you have a Costco membership, Costco has some really good safes that aren't super expensive. You can pick up a biometric safe for around $100.
Yeah, actually, I would probably go with Tractor Supply. They actually have a better, they have better safes, and they're actually more known. And that's just my personal view. I've done some comparison shopping. I couldn't believe out of the places that I've never thought I would find a safe. I found a safe in a Tractor Supply, and is it actually a legit company and all kinds of stuff? But I see where you're going with that.
Yeah, well, I know. What is it? Costco uses LifePod, which they do a lot of those smaller safes, like for going in your vehicle or stuff like that. They're pretty nice, and yeah, you're right. Tractor Supply stores, Coastal Farm and Ranch, some of those places you wouldn't think of have really nice safes. Another question that Gunpowder had asked: any warning signs parents should look out for that their children may be dealing with mental health issues?
Yeah, well, that's a very difficult conversation, at least to give advice on. But obviously, if you see things like behavioral changes, right? I mean, you have to talk to your kids. That's like the most important thing. Is like you have to sit down and talk to your kids. It's something that I work on all the time, right? I have to like, I love my daughters, but sometimes I kind of let them be. But sometimes I have to get involved, right? Because I'm like, no, you need to ask these things. You need to pry. You need to do these things. But um, that's not to say though that people don't take their lives without ever showing any sign, right? That's what happened with the president of my ex company. People always say you got to look out for this, you got to look out for that, but for the most the important things with I think with kids is look for changes in their behavior. Are they isolating themselves? Are they staying locked up in their room? Are they sleeping a lot? Like these are things that would concern me, especially if they hadn't been like that always. But it's a very tough question to answer because I don't think necessarily it matters, right? Some kids could probably put on a brave face just like adults do and still be going through it. My biggest thing is, like I said, it's different for gun owners. Like we have something that is lethal in the house. And, I know probably people right now are saying, well, rope's lethal, cars are lethal, knives are lethal. Yeah, but I'm here from the gun industry. Right? I don't want any more negative outcomes with firearms. If I worked in the rope industry, I'd probably do this for ropes. If I worked in the knife industry, I'd probably do this for knives. But talk to your kids, listen to your kids, and then you make that call.
Mr. Mario, do you have any thoughts on this?
Yeah, in reality, I think safes is always a good measure, but I think the one aspect is education. I think when you educate your kids and you teach them the the lethality that a lot of these guns can have on their body if they use them against them, they tend to understand them more. I think when you treat your kids like they're young men and women, they have a tendency of grasping it a little bit more. Um, Obviously, I agree with Michael. I think it's all based on I think anybody who knows their kids. I mean, I know my kids a lot better than they know themselves sometimes because I could see little things just really big on body language and just understanding how that works. But I know if something's bothering them, something that they need to discuss. um, but I think also the other aspect that parents need to start doing is they need to start having a relationship with their children. A lot of them uh, don't have that. I think there's a lot of them that they don't really want to get involved in the lives of their kids, especially as they start getting older. And I think obviously to me is when you have to be more active and learning more about what they got going on. What are some of the issues that they got going on? What are their challenges that they got going on? Because in reality, I mean, our kids are probably dealing with stuff that we never had to deal with. You stop and think about it. A lot of us old school folks, I mean, when we always got bullied and stuff like that, but we didn't have somebody sending you a direct message on Instagram or Facebook or whatever the case may be. And unfortunately, you got to also understand that these new generations are not they're not as tough minded as a lot of us are. So I think it's just part of really getting to know your kids and just understanding what they're going through. And if you just feel like they can be a threat, you can always change a combination to your safe or whatever the case may be. Um, uh, I was treating my kids like adults. I was make sure that and I always held them accountable for a lot of the stuff that they did. So in many cases, I've never had that problem. Luckily for me, but everybody's situation is different.
So I know, and Bernie's not out there. Uh, he uh, he made a comment again. This was back on um, another live stream. This was with Jake and stuff. He says, over the years, we have been conditioned to look the other way when it comes to mental health because of fear of retribution. Do you see the correlation with that and the fact that, like, now we have more and more of the red flag issues going on. Is that another reason why people may try to avoid seeking help?
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. I mean, it's a joke, but it's a little bit real. Like if I had $1 for every time somebody in the firearms industry came to me and said, I went to see this doctor the other day, or I went to go see somebody and they asked, do I own a firearm? And I just lied. I didn't go back, right? Like I wouldn't have to worry about funding for Walk the Talk America. Um, I think people underestimate, especially those that don't understand firearms, the importance of the Second Amendment to gun people. Because I wouldn't say that I was a gun guy necessarily. I mean, I grew into it, right? But when you feel like you have, and let's just take the guns out of it for a second, when you feel like you could lose your job or your clearance or anything that you use to maybe support your family or you just hold near and dear to your heart, seeking help is not something you're going to do, and that's a problem. Like I tell people all the time, especially when I work with the mental health community, red flag laws are probably cause more damage than good, because I can't tell them enough of how many people are like, I don't want to get red flagged, I'm not going to go get help. And then what happens is if you don't get help when you're still stable and you wait till stage 4, it's just like if you had a lump, you found a lump on your body and you just waited till that thing was so massive, and that's when you went to go get help, that's usually when it's the worst, right? And if you think of your mind like that, the same thing. Don't wait till stage 4. But I do see why people are hesitant to get help. And there's some states where I would tell someone, be very careful going to get help, like the state of New York. They have the SAFE Act. It's not that safe. Like literally people lose their gun rights and they don't even know when they lose them because they just they did the right thing to go get help. So that's one of the things that we are trying to work on, is literally making the mental health community understand, like, some of these things are barriers for people to go get help. And if you want to reduce suicide by firearm, then these are things that we have to start addressing. So I agree with that. The question that, yeah, things like red flag laws, people not understanding us is one of the reasons why we have the cultural competence course, right? Is to make people understand. Like Mario understands this, right? Like there's such thing as lead therapy. So if you went in and sat down with your therapist and you were like, yeah, I had anxiety today and I went to the gun range and I shot off 1,000 rounds. Like we know, gun people know, it's like, oh, that's cool. Yeah. Or that's it. All you did is shoot 1,000, right? Like, but like to somebody outside of the gun industry, like that might concern them and it shouldn't. And that's why we held these courses to teach these clinicians that these things are normal. Like you may not understand the lifestyle, but you're going to respect it. You're going to understand that taking away this person's firearm rights just because you think it's a scary thing that he has it or she has it, that's just a wrong way of thinking. But yeah, it's a barrier to entry for sure.
Mario?
Yeah, I would definitely say that, going to the gun range is very therapeutic for me. I'm not gonna lie, because it's something I know I'm pretty decent at. So I obviously it's in many ways it's good because it releases a lot of the tension you got, man. You know, um, you know, I to me it makes sense to me, but obviously I think that what Michael said is that, yeah, a lot of mental folks don't really understand that. And when it comes to issues with red flag laws, I think it's the dumbest thing in the world. I know that they have tried this with the veteran community, stating that if you have PTSD, that you shouldn't be able to have a firearm. Well, stop and think about that. First of all, there's less than 1% of us that join the military. And I will probably say that more than half of us have deployed to a combat theater one time or another. So you're going to say that pretty much half of the people that have served, of that 1% that have served, have PTSD or have something like that. And somehow you think that they're a threat. To be honest with you, if that was the case, you would have seen a lot of people, being dead right now by a lot of veterans. You know what I'm saying? If that was the case, but in many cases, I think what they don't understand is that we have such respect for our firearms that they don't even know. We still have this whole thing with trigger discipline and not flagging people and stuff. Anybody who's in the military knows exactly what I'm talking about. you know just having that etiquette, where you check your firearm, even though for a fact that the other guy just cleared it, you still check it anyways. It's like we take extra precautions on anything and everything that we do, and we are honestly in most cases the least possible that will do anything stupid like that. Because if that's the case, you would have seen hundreds and hundreds of cases. There would have been some sort of legislation that would have passed already, stating that most combat veterans are a threat to society, and we're not. You know, I know for the longest I didn't go to get medical help because, well, I have a secret clearance. Say, hey, you know what? When I got out of the military, I could definitely use that. So I know that and I think that's the reason why we had a lot of senior non-commissioned officers that ended up passing away because of this kind of stuff, because they just felt like they couldn't go anywhere, they couldn't talk to anybody or do anything. Who do you talk to when you're a colonel or a lieutenant colonel? You don't talk to your subordinate. You always talk to somebody who's has the same rank as you, or higher rank. But the higher rank you get, the harder it is, man. Like for me, I was a senior non-commissioned officer, so it's like, who the hell you talk to? You can't go talk to your private, you know. So those are the kind of issues that we still deal with on a regular basis, and we had this stigma within our units that, hey, if you go to mental health, man, like the leadership is going to consider you unstable, and they don't want you to be part of the unit, or they're not going to. When you go out to do a field exercise, you're not going to get a weapon, which is, to me, is like the ultimate insult to anybody. So I really hope that people just get off that, because in reality, you're creating more of a problem instead of trying to help.
Yeah, Mario, I got to tell you the story is kind of interesting. I think you'll appreciate this. So in 2019, I got invited to work on the White House's task force for suicide prevention for the VA. It was called Prevents, and it was really funny because I showed up at the White House. I had no idea how I got there, and I thought I was being punked until I got like the official invite. I was like, "You want me there?" But it was kind of interesting because when I was there, I kind of realized that I was the only person from the firearms industry. Like there were a lot of people in the room, which was filled with obviously active duty military combat vets and a lot of like some of the brightest minds when it comes to suicide prevention and mental health. But I realized I'm the only person that literally has a job in the firearms community that was there. So it was kind of special, but we had to give these like little speeches to introduce ourselves. And I went, and, when you look at a room and you see people watching you speak, you can quickly figure out like who is a gun person or gets it, and then who kind of still doesn't like firearms, right? You can see it in their faces, or you can see them people nod and stuff like that. But it was one of the cool things about it is right after I left, or stopped my speech, there was a very highly decorated gentleman who stood up and he was like, "You need to listen to that guy." He's like, "Listen to him." He's like, "You sent me." He's like, "When I was a kid, he's like, you gave me a firearm." He's like, "You told me to name it." He's like, you made it part of my identity." He's like, "Then you sent me overseas to kill with it." And he's like, "And I did everything you asked." And he's like, "Then I came home and you didn't have any use for me anymore." And he's like, "And the first thing you wanted to do when I had trouble is take away the thing you made me name and part of my life and identity." It's like, you wanted to
E-
take that
e-
away
e-
from me.
Exactly. I mean, you really stop and think about it. Stop and think about what the military is and what is it that we do. The purpose of the military is to win wars, right? So you create the ultimate weapon. You train this person. You give them all the knowledge, and you teach them how to ensure that they know how to kill the enemy. If we get to, worst goes to worst, and all of a sudden, when they're done with that, they're no longer they're no longer valuable to you. They're a nuisance, or they may be somebody who will trigger in some kind of way. So I know exactly what you're talking about, because I'm telling you, there's a lot of people that get out of the military and feel exactly how you're telling right now.
So I've had a poll going for the last hour over on the YouTube side. It says, do you think doctors or mental health have a right to ask about 2A?
Huh, it's a hard one, right? I think anytime it's how they ask it that I always have an issue with. Once again, drawing back to the cultural competence course that we throw, right? Because that's how we teach people to approach these things. And I've always had an issue with people asking, and I understand that most people are probably coming from a place of good, right? Like they just want you to be aware that that's dangerous, or whatever, right? But it's the way they go about it. Um, my issue is more or less the how and then the why, right? Because I look at things like even red flag laws, right? One of my biggest issues with red flag laws is they come and they take away your firearm. That's it. They don't take the rope out of your house. They don't drain your pool. They don't take your car. They don't get rid of the knives. They just take the gun, right? And then there's nothing that they do to help you. It's just they take something away from you. And that's how I feel like sometimes these doctors ask these questions, because there's nothing wrong with asking somebody, hey, you're going through it right now, or your kid's going through it right now. Do you have a plan for your firearm? Right? Like I don't see a problem with that, because that's an honest question. Like, do you have a plan? I have a problem with when they ask it in a way it's like, do you own a firearm? And it sounds like they're being judgmental, right? Or that's going to change the course of whatever is going to happen. So I don't have a problem with it. I have a problem with the why, and without the explanation. And I feel like that's the problem with mental health clinicians and doctors, is they don't have that cultural competence, and they don't understand our fear. And even if they are coming from a place of good intention, it comes off as something more sinister, or like they're going that route of, okay, now we need to watch you even closer, So that's my answer to it.
Mario?
Yeah, I've been asked that question before, and it does, and sometimes, to be honest with you, it kind of makes you defensive, you know, because in reality, what does a firearm got to do with how I feel? I mean, I've never mentioned to you that I would ever use a firearm if I ever commit suicide, because I mean, there's hundreds of ways you can kill yourself without ever using a firearm, you know. But sometimes, because you're like, for instance, myself, you retire military, they obviously think the worst. And in most cases, that's the reason why so many of us do not want to get mental help from a civilian agency that really doesn't understand us, unless they are a agency that deals with veterans on a regular basis, that understand the sensitivities issues that come along with our firearms. Because the way we look at things is like, that's like you're messing with my kids, man. I mean, that's how much I value it. That's how much I value my freedoms. Like, and that's a freedom I'm not willing to just tell anybody they can have. So yeah, I have a tendency of getting a little defensive when they ask me that question. And but obviously, I've been lucky to find some organizations that deal with combat veterans on a regular basis, so they're not asking those kind of questions. But I can tell you, I've had to deal with that before in the past, and it was something that would definitely upset me, because um you know I never mentioned firearms. I never mentioned the fact that I would ever use one. So why are you even bringing that up? And and we already get stereotyped for the simple fact that we're in the military. They feel that almost everybody who's been in the military has some sort of weapon in their house. It's just the way it is. It's a knife, it's it's a it's a shotgun, or rifle, or pistol, revolver, or something. And yeah, in most cases we have it because that's what we're used to. I mean, it goes back to, like we were talking about earlier, you create this monster and you expect him not to have the same weapons he used to kill all the enemies so you can have your 9 to 5. What do you expect?
Foss, do you have an opinion on this?
Hang on.
Well, Foss is dealing with that. So I asked the question based upon the fact more and more doctors, just GP, your general practice doctors, are starting to ask these questions. And it's like, I'm coming in here to deal with stomach acid, acid reflux, or I'm coming in here because, I broke a bone or whatever. And what does the fact if I own a firearm or not have to do with how you're going to treat the the underlying cause, which is I got acid reflux, or I've got a broken bone, or I've got a head cold, whatever. So asking if you own a firearm, I honestly I don't think that they need to ask those questions. um so we've got 38 votes in. 11% say yes, they should be able to ask. 71% say no. 13% says depending on the situation. So yeah, like if you're seeking out, mental health or whatever, yeah, depending on, they should be able. And as Mike
I
was saying, it's how they go about asking the question.
I
You know,
I think for me it just I think the biggest problem that I have with is with the questionnaires itself. I think sometimes the questionnaires, if they were if they were just talking about ailments within your body, it's fine. But I think sometimes they have mental health questions in there that I really feel that unless I'm coming in for mental health issues, they shouldn't really be asked. Like, I don't know. I mean, I know I'm not a medical doctor, and I know in many cases they just want to analyze you and figure out what's really wrong with you, because we understand that also the mental aspect also can trigger or hurt other parts of your body. So I don't know. I just think that if the I my biggest problem is with the questionnaires itself, because sometimes I think they're a little bit too invasive of my privacy, and that's just the way I look at it.
yep,
That's kind of where I am. For the most part, no, it's kind of invasive, I think, and there are times where I think it is relevant when you're dealing with the mental health side, and I haven't, as far as I can recall, I've never been asked. Um, so I'm not sure how they frame the questions or anything like that, but um, yeah, I don't think, the schools don't really need to be asking. And, is kind of as Mario was saying, you go in, to have your eye checked out. They don't need to be asking. That's it's kind of where my opinion's at. And to everyone out in the chat, I haven't been ignoring you. I've been posting, but I'm posting under G23. Um, so
yeah. I was gonna say I'm getting a lot of credit for stuff that I'm not even doing. So, in the last one was, uh, okay, I just lost my screen. It says, "Come on, man, the government." So, um, I'm gonna end that poll. So I know I've probably got a million more questions, and we've been going at this about an hour. So I don't know how much more time you have, Mike. So I don't want to take up all your time.
No, go ahead. I got some time here.
So G Web's asked a question in a different chat, and it has to deal with Walk the Talk America. He says, um, has Walk the Talk America worked with Dr. Go, Doctors for Responsible Gun Ownership, to join pro-gun physician databases?
It's funny. We have sat down. They're fans of Walk Talk America. I think I met them at the gun rights policy, G Webs. I think that's where I met them. Unfortunately, we've never really connected on anything more than, hey, I dig what you're doing. But that's something that I think is important, right? So yes and no, right? We're aware of each other, and we're good. But it just after that initial conversation, it's kind of like almost everything. Like you get excited, whoop de whoop de whoop, and then life goes on. You keep it moving. So they're doing their thing, and we're doing our thing. But yeah, in the future, I'd like to do something.
So, Foss, I know I've capitalized a lot of these two great people's time. Do you have any questions you want to ask them?
I didn't. I think you kind of covered any question that I would have. But I just, I would like to thank both of them, Michael and Mario, for coming on. It's been discussed that it's stuff that doesn't kind of get swept under the rug, and everybody kind of looks the other way because it's an uncomfortable subject that nobody wants to deal with, and it's something that is important to deal with. That with the military, we put all these expectations on them, and then once we're done, they get cast aside, and which is it's a real injustice, I think. So I just wanted to say thank you to both of you to come on, and for you guys reaching out to try and help um, other people.
Appreciate that, man. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Foss. For me, it's a very personal issue because I've seen what it's done to a lot of good friends of mine. I've seen people who I never thought would commit suicide, committed suicide. Um, and it's crazy. I kind of think about I think about an example that recently happened uh, with uh, with a comedian. Just lost my train of thought, forgot his name. Robin Williams. Nobody in this world would have ever thought that Robin Williams would commit suicide. Why? Because he looks happy go lucky. He looks like he's enjoying life and doing what he needs to be doing, but inside he's dying. And in reality, I I definitely have a tendency of 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 seeing it the same way. I mean, there's times where, I mean, you guys have seen me in other chats and you guys have seen me do my own thing. I'm pretty happy go lucky, guys. I really am. But in most cases, man, I'm dying inside, guys. I'm not gonna lie to you. And if I don't take my happy pills and get my therapy and stuff like that, I can't function. you know and these are things that I have to deal with on an everyday basis, and I can just imagine how many of my fellow veterans have to deal with on a regular basis. It's sometimes it's tough, man. And that's the reason why so many of them get into the drug habit, the alcoholism, and they start doing real stupid stuff that they shouldn't be doing after they got out of the military. But in most cases, it's just that this is the environment that they were brought into, and they're no longer, they just don't feel like they are a part of society. You know what I mean? A lot of us who join the military, we sure as hell don't do it for the paycheck. I can tell you that much, man. We do it because we want to make a difference. We want to be of service to our country. When you're there, you feel like you have a purpose in life, and you're doing what you need to be doing. And then when you're done, like for me, I retired, um, which is a miracle in itself, because very few of us actually retired. I think I was, out of my platoon, I think there's only four of us that have retired. The rest got out, you know. So it's like, you know, you retired, and you know, I was going 100 miles an hour, man, and I loved it, you know. But you know, obviously, I was getting too old for the job, and you know, I was having a lot of aches and pains, and it just wasn't there anymore, and it really hurt me. But then you get to a point where you are now, like I am now, and it really sucks because you just feel like you don't have a purpose anymore, you know. So what do I do? I think that the best thing for me is, well, I started looking at every damn resource I could get. I started being a damn welfare recipient. I don't give a shit, because in reality, I gotta I gotta help myself here. You know, and there's a lot of good veteran organizations out there that really want to help. Like not too long ago, I actually signed up for a residential. It's like a, you know, residential, like a, you know, PTSD clinic with Mighty Oaks Foundation, and it's here in California. So I'm going to be going to that in June, and I can't wait. I really need that. You know, I really need to be able to connect with my peers and fellow veterans and first responders, and you know, I think the best for me is just exchange ideas and figure out, you know, how do you come out of this successful? How do you deal with the issues that you've been dealing with after you got out of the military? And I guess I just regret not doing this earlier, but I'm glad that I'm trying to take the steps that I need to do in order for get myself to be, you know, well again. I mean, my family's growing, man. I'm gonna have my second grandchild soon, so it's like I gotta start enjoying the fruits of my labor, you know. So I really urge a lot of you guys out there that if you're a veteran, man, and you're dealing with stuff, man, you know, talk to your peers, man. Get some help. You know, go out there and find the resources you need, because in reality, they're just there for you. If you want it, they're there, man.
So, mandatory carry, it says, what part of California? He says he goes out there to visit.
Oh,
Papa carries once a month. I'm not
I
sure
live
if
in
he's talking
Bakersfield,
about.
bro.
So,
I live
and
in Bakersfield.
so I know Mario was just kind of talking about a little bit of this. Um, Brian Gross, who's a firefighter, former EMT um, in Ohio, I think Marion County. I don't remember exactly, but he says, I truly appreciate all the insight. I teach honor guards in law, fire, and EMS. We have an issue arising with public servants thinking that suicide will get them a line of duty death ceremony. Do you guys have any thoughts on any of that?
Um, okay, so they're thinking of committing suicide so they can get a duty death certificate. I'm not understanding. Is that mostly for like first responders?
Yeah, I think law enforcement,
Uh,
firefighters, and EMS. So, like, they get a duty death ceremony. So they get, like,
they get
uh,
a full honors type of.
yeah,
Well, I I don't know how it is for a lot of first responders, but you know, to be honest with you, um, I think regardless of what you served or not, you should be able to get whatever you get. But that shouldn't be the reason why you should want to commit suicide. I mean that's some pretty sad stuff to be thinking about. You know, I mean, um, but what I would probably urge is that I think the biggest thing that we're doing is that a lot of these first responders are going. They're all based on the funding of the you know, cities and counties that they work for. But I don't think many of them have enough mental health facilities or personnel that can really help them. And that's the sad part of them all, is that there's stuff for veterans, but I yet to see that for first responders. I don't know if I'm right or wrong on that, Michael. You probably have more insight than I do on that.
Actually, this is the first time I've heard of that even being an issue or something that somebody's going to do that for. I would have guessed it would be like life insurance policies or something, like to take care of your family after you left. But I don't have any insight on that question, unfortunately. But like, I agree with you, man. That's a very dark. It just sucks that people think about that.
Yeah, it's just that really is sad, man. That you feel that somehow that's the only way people are going to honor your service. Like, man, that's pretty sad. Um, but I honestly just feel like first responders don't get enough. They don't get enough love, and they're the ones that see a lot of gnarly stuff too, man. Because you stop and think about it, they see all the nastiness in society. They really do, and I really don't think that a lot of these departments have enough. I mean, stop and think about it. Let's say you have a small city department, they only gonna have 10 officers. I don't think they're gonna have all the resources that they would. I mean, like you're a part of NYPD or maybe LAPD, maybe they'll have more resources. But I mean, when we're talking about little, small agencies, sometimes they don't have the same stuff, and I think that's the biggest problem that we have with first responders is they don't have the resources like veterans do, and so.
That and a lot of first responders always, I think about the fact that if they reach out and ask for help because maybe they are having that dark spot, am I going to lose my job? Am I going to lose the ability to provide for my family? And so they're like, well, if I lose that, then what am I going to do with the rest of my life? And so it leads them down a path even more that I can't really reach out because then I may lose my job. And if I lose my job, I lose my sense of purpose in life. And so they only think that they have one option. And it's a sad option that's what they're thinking is, I just need to end it so no one has to worry. And hopefully insurance, life insurance or whatever, pension will still be paid to my family so that they can still be taken care of. And I do believe we need to somehow get more awareness out to EMS, fire, law enforcement, and the military to help. These guys put their lives on the line every day to grant us the ease of life that the rest of us who have never served get to face every day. And here lately, first responders, it doesn't matter if you're law enforcement or if you're an EMS, they're being ambushed. They're being senselessly murdered on the street. And not only they have to worry about that, also, plus everything that they see on a daily basis. And people wonder why some of them go and do commit suicide. They don't feel that they have any other option. And I think that we need to bring more of this topic out so people understand that there is options out there. And that they're not all alone, and there are people who actually care and are willing to just be an ear and listen. And we're not going to prejudge. I honestly think more and more of us YouTubers that claim that we're in the 2A community need to start focusing more on how we can bring this topic and make it more public so that the stigma that is the societal issues have ways to be talked about without having to try hiding and worrying about what is going to be said about you. So, any of you guys have any thoughts on that?
Honestly, when it comes to what people think of you, it's always going to be that stigma is always going to be there, man, and it really, really is unfortunate. I think and that sometimes even can prevent people from getting promotions, getting the things that they need. But then they feel stuck, and they feel to a point where I can't say what I need to say, because hey, I got a coming promotion. People are not going to look for me if I want to become sergeant or lieutenant or captain or whatever the case may be, you know. But I think I think that there's not enough resources for a lot of our first responders, and I don't even know how they deal with it because they deal with this stuff on an everyday basis. For me, yeah, man, I dealt with the horrors of war, but 18 months I was there and I was gone, and after that is just dealing with it afterwards. But I can just imagine how hard it is for those that have to continuously deal with that on an everyday basis.
Mike or Foss, do you guys have a
I mean, you guys
one?
already said it, so I'm not going to repeat what you said. But yeah, I mean, you even think about the dispatcher, right? Like we had on the Guns and Mental Health podcast, we brought on a dispatcher one day to talk about the issues that they face on a daily basis, right? And you think, well, they're just taking phone calls, but like their imagination, like they don't get finality to the situation, or very rarely do they. Right, when you hear people screaming in the background and like, okay, we're sending an officer out there, right, trying to keep people calm. So I think is, just to reiterate what all of you said, like, yeah, when it comes to first responders and it comes to people that are out there on the front lines, obviously we got to do a better job. It's such a rock and a hard place though, because these jobs are from a position of strength, right? And being able to keep your stuff together in these times and be calm and help and service the public. So, I get the hesitancy of where people are like, look, I don't want to come forward, or, I have to keep it together, at least keep this face on while I'm out there doing these things. But yeah, I agree with both of you, everything you said.
Foss, do you have an opinion before I ask G Webb's question?
No, I don't really have anything else to add to it.
So G Webb says for Mike, from your time with Walk the Talk America, is the medical side of things generally receptive to the idea that awareness of gun ownerships or gun owners' issues is something they can be untrained in, or no?
I would say that they're very, for the people that we get to come through I think that our course, its popularity grew from word of mouth, right? Not because we have this huge advertising budget and we're able to make people aware of it. So I think, yeah, I think they're very receptive, right? Here's the deal, and this is what I tell people all the time. If the way that we are doing it and have done it has worked, we wouldn't be going the wrong direction. Right. So I think a lot of people in the mental health field and just the health field in general are starting to understand that their way isn't working and that they need to embrace the gun community and learn from the gun community. Learn about the things that we're concerned about, learn about guns in general. Right. Um, I kind of compare it to, there was a time when people didn't understand like the LGBTQ community. Right. And I tell this to people all the time. It's like, you don't have to understand a lifestyle to accept and understand what they go through. Right. And we did that for many years. Like we people were afraid to come forward and say who they were because they didn't want to be an outcast. It's the same thing that we deal with in guns, right? Like um, there has to be a way that you can learn about something and not necessarily participate in the lifestyle. And I think that's what this course does. Once again, I'm not here just to promote this course, but the reception that we've gotten, we have to give these surveys for them to get the CEU credits. And we have never gotten a negative comment, which is kind of amazing. It's shocking to me. And we've had over 1,000 people come through. Most of the time we get comments like, the things that I'm proud of is the person's like, when I came in here, I was anti-gun. Now I think I'm going to be gun neutral. Like, I'm like, okay, that's a start, right? If I can get you to gun neutral, then I think that's progress, right? Because I don't expect people that don't understand guns or don't like guns to ever become gun people. I think that you can, right? And that's what I mean, everybody here on this panel and everybody that's probably listening is like, well, I have all these instances where I took someone shooting and now they're hooked, right? And they weren't into guns, right? But we can't expect everybody to do that. But I would say the overall like reaction to it has always been positive, and I think it's how we deliver the message. The people that I have involved in the organization, including myself, like, deep down inside, we are like prior from my cold dead hands, but we don't come off like that, right? And I think that that's part of the biggest turnoff of some of the people outside of the community is that they have this belief that's false that, hey, you can't talk to gun people about guns, right? And it's like, no, there's a way we can do this. So, yeah, I think it's working.
So on WTTA.org, is there a specific place that people, if they want to go and check out this course and that aren't in the clinical side, can go and look at it and maybe review it?
Yeah,
Or
we have it posted on our the first 2 courses are on our website, and if you complete those courses and you go through and you take the questionnaire at the end and everything like that, like you will get a certificate from us. We average at least probably 2 or 3 people that take the course a week. The third part you can't do because you got to go to the range for that, right? Like that's the third part is what we do in person, but the first 2 that we do are up there right now. And we do have people that aren't part of the mental health community and just general health community go in there and take it. So it's up there. And it's hours. So I just want to warn people, this isn't a 15-minute thing. You got to go through it. And it asks you a bunch of questions at the end of it. And so you got to kind of sort of pay attention. But yeah, you could skim it and stuff like that.
so, had a comment out here from Cowgirl Candace, who says, people still do not understand the LGBT community. States to this day keep passing fascist legislation to encourage LGBT youth into suicide. If you want ideas on fighting stigma, I can help. So,
Absolutely. We're always welcome to ideas and other people's views on things. So yeah, I mean, if there's things that obviously you can go through our website, you can go through any of our social media streams. I'm on social media. I'm easy to talk to. So if there's things that you have ideas about, I'd love to hear them.
you want to give a quick rundown of some of the places that they can find you? I know I've put links to your YouTube channel and to WTTA.org in the description of this video.
Yeah, absolutely. On all social media, it's at Walk the Talk US, right? So that's either Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook. Me personally, on Instagram is probably the best way if you're going to reach out to me. And that's just at Michael, like Michael _ Sodini.
I put links in the side chat a little bit earlier. I think I got most of the social media. Hopefully got them all.
Again, thank you, Voss, for doing all your hard work that you put into this.
Oh, no problem. I'm going to actually I got to step away. I have to go take care of some stuff. So again, I just wanted to thank Michael and Mario for you guys coming on and talking with us.
Yeah,
Sounds good, buddy.
Let me unmute. So I know we were planning on about an hour. We're at an hour and a half into this. So I am going to definitely thank Mike for his time and everything. And if you want anything to like promote anything you're doing or any way people can reach out to you, go ahead and do that, and we are going to start to kind of wrap this up.
Yeah, absolutely. Once again, it's at Walk the Talk US. You know, we're always looking for all the help we can get. If there's some creative way that you feel like you can help us, like we're all ears. Obviously, we take donations. If you have it, we understand. If you don't, we do understand that too. But if you just promote the organization to us, that's just as good as a donation for us. Spreading the word that we're out there, making people aware of it. But I just want to thank you for giving me the time and the platform, and it's been great. So thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. And I know you were talking about this earlier. You didn't really put a whole lot of talk into it, but the flyers, you're working with gun manufacturers to include in some of their, about how much does that cost per firearm, roughly?
Well, it depends. We have some, we have some organizations that I have to supply the flyers to, and then we have others that print them themselves. So I've never really done an analysis of the cost, as it occurs to our printing and stuff like that. But that's one thing that we do have on the website, that you can go on there and download the PDF of the flyers. I know that we have some influencers that have gone out of their way, guys like Clover Tech and Ghost Tactical. And I think G-Webs, you've been very instrumental in helping us spread the word. But they'll go to their local gun shops and get the gun shops to print out the flyer and actually have it available in the stores. That's another way you could support us, is once again, spreading the word, getting the flyers out there. Now, these flyers lead to free and anonymous mental health screenings. They are free and they are anonymous. Whatever information you give is just by your choice. And it's powered by Mental Health America, but screenings are good for people that aren't even in crisis, because it gives people the ability to kind of check, underneath the hood and make sure everything's okay and see where they're at. So it's something that I recommend, but we do have these on ammo boxes. Arms Corps Ammo puts on the side of their boxes. Companies like Century and High Point. There's plenty. I'm going to forget a bunch of them, but Bursa, like all these companies, they put these in the box. Arms Corps does it with their guns. And once again, it's just us as the 2A community and industry coming together and saying, look, like, this isn't going to save everybody, but if we can give people the opportunity to get help or just check on themselves, we're going to be to do it. We don't want the government to do it for us. Nobody needs to tell us what to do. We can do it ourselves, and we can step up and become leaders in this field, and try to get the firearms community where the alcohol industry got with DUIs, right? Nobody blames Johnny Walker when somebody gets behind the car and does something horrific, right? And we can get there. We just have to be better than everybody else. And we can do that, right? So it's about defending your Second Amendment rights. Like, probably for my cold dead hands on this left side, but on this right side, it's also about, let's be proactive and get ahead of it and be better than everybody else at it. So, for those that want to go to the website, check out the resource card, they can. It's on there.
And I want to thank you again for you coming on and spending an hour and a half having this great conversation. And I want to say, anytime you want to come back on, I'm more than willing to have you on as a guest and, help get this message out. I'm probably going to reach out to Jake and try getting Jake on in the next couple weeks. I don't know what his schedule will be like, so I'm going to try talking to him.
Yeah, that'll be good. I think you guys would love Jake as a guest. So.
Yes. And Mr. Mario, you want to plug your YouTube channel, anything else that you have, and, give some parting thoughts?
Yeah. First of all, thank you for having me. I really do appreciate it. Anytime we can talk about suicide prevention or anything that pertains to the mental health well-being of our veterans and also first responders, I'm all for it. You guys can find me, Mario Mosin, on YouTube. I also have an Instagram, and I am Battle Bean on Facebook. So if you guys look me up, I'm more than happy to have you as part of the family there. Just I enjoy really helping people. I actually feel like I help more people through my ordeals and talking about them on YouTube. It's really it's really gratifying when I get the comments about, some of the videos that I make, and usually it's from loved ones of veterans and stuff like that, where they talk about how my video helped them look at a different view perspective on things, or how they can better help their loved one. Actually, one of the videos that I have the most hits on is the one I talk about relationships, and I go very very detailed in it, and I'm very blunt about the issues that both the husband and the wife, or vice versa, make when they're in a relationship. So being able to understand your loved one, it's critical. You got to understand that these young men and women come back from war. They come back torn, and in many cases it may not seem that way to you, because they look like normal happy-go-lucky people, but inside, like I was telling you, they're dying inside. So we just got to help them. We got to support them, and help them in any kind of way. 22 or 21 veterans a day dying from suicide is way too much. And to be honest with you, many of these young men and women have sacrificed their best years of their lives to protect all of us. I think we need to do more, and we need to be more vocal, and educate people as much as we can, because it's vital. Many of these people, I mean, by the time I get to my 80s or 90s, who knows, man? They might not be that many Iraq veterans, and I don't want to be to the point where they're like picking us ones and twosies. Oh yeah, look, we got an Iraq veteran. They're one of the few that are left. Why? Because all of them committed suicide. It's pretty sad, guys. So I appreciate you having me on. I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to, put my thoughts and some of the issues that I deal with, and how I can better help others. So thank you for your time.
Again, thank you, Mario. And again, you are more than welcome to be on here anytime. Uh, I love when we discuss reloading, and when we get more in depth into some of the topics like tonight, where we don't really hear a lot of these topics being brought out. And so I'm glad you guys could come on. I am going to play the outro, and then we will get out of here.